And now, friends, welcome into Suns Today, your official home for the summer content of the Suns UCF. You give us 30-ish minutes, we'll give you informed, we'll give you entertained, and maybe even scratching your head. We got a great show planned tonight. Before we get into that, though, the gentleman staring next to me on this screen is one Trace Strelka. Trace, good to see you again, my friend. How are things?
Things are good. Good to see you. Will this be the fastest show around? Is there a little rival for the kingdom?
I make no promise because you know how this works. We got asking questions, and the mailbag is with us this evening. What's in the box is with us this evening. A new segment, game, I don't know what you want to call this, with us, and we have a meaty topic as well. So I can't promise you 30 minutes, Trace, but I can promise you will be entertained for the bulk of this time. And let's start off with the first part, Trace. I got some new gadgets I want to try out for the whole audience here. Let's start off with the first one.
One big thing.
We got one big thing, Trace. Our big story to cover for the night. Brought to you, by the way, by our good friends at Werner Hoffman, Greg and Garcia. They fund this entire outfit, so make sure you patronize them. WernerHoffman.com is how you find them. Trace, I have a question for you. You prepared for this question?
Well, with you, I never can.
Here you go.
Sure.
Do you trust new Knights head coach Scott Frost to return UCF to glory?
You know, it reminds me of something that my grandfather said when I was a kid that stayed with me, that, you know, trust, respect are earned, not given. And I know this might come as some shock to those of you watching. I don't instinctively trust Scott Frost in this endeavor. I think I'm taking him on faith, right? For those that are religious, you know, you have faith in a higher power. I guess I look at it more as I have faith in Scott Frost. I don't know that I trust him to return UCF to the success of 2017, but I'm going to take it on faith that he can.
Also a glass half empty kind of guy. But here's what I am also a list maker, Trey. So I made a list. This was hard to figure out. So I tried to make a list of what are the things I trust about Scott Frost. What are the things I don't? Here are the things I trust about Scott Frost. Number one, I genuinely think he's learned and he's grown from his experience in Nebraska. I do think that has shaped him in some way, whether or not it's a way that will allow him to be successful on the field. We don't know yet, but I do think he's learning and grown from that. Secondly, I think he cares about culture. I don't think this talk about build a culture. I think we've interviewed and been around tons of players from the 16, 17 teams. All of them talk lovingly about Scott Frost, about what he built, the amount of people who were so excited about his return back. I think the culture building is real. I think he can do a good job of that. I do think he'll be able to rebuild whatever may have been lost of culture. 3, I think he wants to be here. He said it over and over in the conversations that he was happy with the Rams. He liked what he was doing. There was only one job he was coming back for. This was the job, and the phone rang, and here he is. So I think he genuinely wants to be here. I think he's excited to be back. I think he's excited to sort of relaunch what he started. Here's the last thing I trust about Scott Frost. I think he knows offense. We can talk about his teams in Nebraska not being good, but I mean, the guy grew up under the Oregon tree, had success here at UCF. His offenses at Nebraska, while the records weren't great, they averaged 30-plus points a game throughout his tenure there. I think he knows offense. I think he can coach offense. I think he's learned some things over time as well, too. So those are 4 things that at least I know I trust about Scott Frost. Your reaction, am I wrong in any of those 4 that you trust with Scott Frost?
No, I stand by my statement off the top, but I agree with those 4. I feel confident about those. You know, the one you said about him wanting to be here. I do believe, as we've talked about with players, that when we speak to players, that in that moment, that is what they believe until something changes. And I'm going to take on faith that this is where Scott Frost wants to be until something may change down the line. I believe him, and I take him at his word.
All right, wouldn't be the Suns if I didn't go to negative town, Trace. Here are the things I don't trust about Scott Frost. Number 1, in-game coaching decisions. This is a man who's 5-22 in one-score games, had a bunch of them in Nebraska where he could have won the game late and things don't happen. Now, I know you can't look at all those individually and say, well, this decision, that decision, but clearly something is amiss in there. I think there are situations where is he making the right decision? I think we can all remember the opening game. I think it was in Ireland against Northwestern, and he went to an onside kick after they scored a touchdown. Northwestern recovered, they scored, they never come back to win the game, right? So I think in-game decisions, still not so sold on Scott Frost there. Here's my second one. I think this is going to be controversial, so everybody buckle up. Assistant coaching hires. We all fell in love with the staff a little bit, but let's think about this for a second, right? The 16-17 staff is here, catch lightning in a bottle, everything's fantastic. That entire staff goes to Nebraska. and it suddenly all starts to fall apart. Makes you wonder if that staff was ready for the jump to the Big Ten at that point. Were they ready for that? He then begins to jettison guys from that staff, bring new guys in, so much so that there are still some relationships that haven't been mended from folks who were on that staff there. He obviously leaves and he comes back to UCF. And again, you can say Sean Beckton, solid hire, right? We know that. I think Sean Clark, O-line, I think that's a solid hire. I think that's somebody who would do a good job. I think Pete Alomar, special teams coordinator, I think that's a solid hire. I think Kenny Martin, a solid hire. But then you get to Alex Grinch. Not so sure what's happening there. Mark D'Onofrio has been around the block a time or two. Steve Cooper, a young, unproven offensive coordinator, never called offense. And I'm going to say it, Trace. Mackenzie Milton, a first-year quarterback coach with no.
Oh, okay. Here we go.
Do I trust him to hire the right coaches? I think that one's still up for debate. And my last one is recruiting philosophy. When he was here first time at UCF, he had a great opportunity to find the diamonds in the rough of the world and make them great players. He gets to Nebraska. He starts getting 4 stars. He had good recruiting classes at Nebraska. His highest ever was 32. His lowest was 18. Good recruiting classes. But again, the record that wasn't there, right? And so was he thinking about the right players? Did he find the right fits? Gets to UCF. And you want to look at it, some of the guys in the offer letters, they're not exactly Power 4 schools offering the guys we're offering as well, too. So I think he's changed the philosophy. He's not going after stars like Gus Malzahn and the previous staff did. I think he's trying to find fit, talent, culture, some of those other things. But it's a unique philosophy. Will it work here, Trace? That I don't trust. So those are the 3 things I don't trust about Scott Frost. Your reaction to any of those 3? Am I off base at all?
Yeah, in the way in which he himself has said, hey, it's not going to be 2017, and he's trying to get the fan base to accept that. I'm also willing to say he's a few years removed from Nebraska, and I don't know how much I'm willing to hold Nebraska against him. I really feel there's been a major reset button for UCF as a program, but for Scott Frost as well. So if you're not going to replicate 2017, and you shouldn't expect that, I don't know that he replicates the 5 and 20-something in those close games and some of the mistakes. Lessons learned, perhaps. I give him a reset button on that. In terms of the quality of players, I think this also speaks to the big unknown is how he adjusts to the dollars and cents of modern college football within UCF's budget structure. We talk about what 2017, 2018 would have looked like in this transfer portal era, NIL, revenue sharing, all of that. How many of those players would have been retained and stayed? Coming off of 2016, where there was an upswing, who might they have lost after the 2016 season? So this is a completely different animal. I think if you're just looking at the quality of players, the names, if you're going to buy into the stars, there is some cause for concern. That's why I think you're going to see him in that bottom tier in the preseason projections in every outlet, if not last, as I mentioned on this week's Around the Kingdom, as a preseason projection. And I don't know, coaching staff, I'm going to take that on faith as well. Some will work better than others. Some might not work out as well. But I'm going to take them on faith that within the budget structure that they have, that he got the best guys that he could. He brought back some old favorites that he had worked with and the UCF family is familiar with, and some new faces. And we're just going to have to see how it all comes together. What is really a rebuilding year, really a transitional year. And he himself in his various media opportunities has stated that. So I think your list, I can see where you come up with a distrust there. I'm not willing to go quite so far. I think there's a bit of a reset button. And that's why, again, I go back to I'm taking him on faith that he's going to bring these elements together, if not in season 1, as he continues to build the program.
Does he get a pass this year from the fan base? Does he get a pass? I mean, short of not winning a game, does he get a pass this year in terms of expectations?
Well, 4-8 and 4 different quarterbacks with the amount of talent that was on the field. I don't know how much of a pass he gets if it's 3-9, 2-10. Yeah, I mean, if it's worse than that, then you have fumbled Jacksonville State, North Carolina A&T, and then you're going back to 2015. Remember, he came in after 2015 and that debacle and was able to exceed expectations. That's why I think 5 wins, 6 wins exceeds those 4-8 expectations. Does he get a pass? He can't lose those first 2.
He better not lose those first 2. There's going to be an uprising on campus. I just think it's so interesting that we're talking about a guy in Scott Frost who a year ago, well, I think we all would have said, complimentary things to an extent. I don't think there was a lot of love between the UCF fan base and Scott Frost, right? I think there's still some jilted feelings, people still holding on to that. And now he can walk right in the door, and he's probably the only coach I think we would trust right now. I think he's the only name, short of a Nick Saban coming out of retirement. Like, I think this is the best possible hire for Terry Mohajir. And I wonder how much, we should put this on a poll at some point. How much does the fan base trust him? How much do they trust that he's going to return the Knights to glory? And, what does glory mean? Are we just a school that wants to get to a nice bowl game? Do we think glory means we're getting to a New Year's Six game again? How do you define glory? What does that look like? Because we only had a bit of a sprinkle of it, and then everything else has kind of been mediocre. What does glory, you think, mean to the Knights fan base?
As we frame this question on trust, I think now if Barry Odom, for example, had been UCF's coach and we were debating this topic on Suns Today, I'm not sure I would trust Barry Odom, but I also don't know how much faith that I would place in Barry Odom. It would be very much a show me, prove it, let's see what you can do. And if that's the benefit of the doubt, the little bit of a pass that Scott Frost gets, a little bit of a time to build, he gets a little bit more goodwill because of what he's done. But remember, if he has a losing season, it will have only been the 2017 season that was a winning season, and then the subsequent tenure in Nebraska and a first year at UCF. That's not good for the Scott Frost brand to continue to rack up losing seasons.
All right, well, let's say you out there, let us know in the comments here of this video. Do you trust Scott Frost? What does he have to do to earn your trust? Or are there some things that maybe still have you skeptical? Let us know here in the comments of this here video. Trace, let's do something new, a new game. I love my games around here. This one we have a sound effect for. Here we go.
That really grinds my gears.
This one's called Grinds My
Solid show.
Grind my gears. Every week, every day, there's something that UCF and Knight Nation, we have to be angry about. So let's lean into our inner anger here, and let's talk about what grinds our gears. And here's how this is going to work. You're going to give me something that grinds your gears. I'm going to give you something that grinds my gears. And we're going to decide if the other person is justified in their gear grindingness or if they're not. But
gear grinding.
only the way the Suns can. We're going to use the George O'Leary anger to decide how angry we are. And so for those listening on audio, perhaps 4 Georges means this is the worst steak ever and stuff. 3 Georges means this is beyond not good enough, rather. 2 Georges, I don't love it, Ace. And 1 George, it's not as bad as starting Pete DeNovo. So that is our George anger index, Trace. You lead off first. Tell me what's grinding your gears this week, Trace Choco. What has really got you fired up?
A lot of faith and promise and hope in Rich Wallace at UCF baseball. NCAA tournament first year of the Rich Wallace era fall on their face in year 2. 9-21 in conference play. You play in Florida. Really? That's what grinds my gears. They don't even make the Big 12 championship. I'm not even talking about NCAA tournament, which 8 schools from the Big 12 make that, including Cincinnati, right? Going in at the same time as UCF from the American. That grinds my gears. This should be a better program, a more consistent program after all these years. We talked a little bit about who else should be in the UCF Athletics Hall of Fame, and I mentioned Jay Bergman. Boy, it never feels like UCF can get back to the glory days of Jay Bergman. So grinds my gears that baseball not performing better in year 2 under Rich Wallace.
All right, let me pull up my O'Leary index here. I'm going to give this 2 O'Learys. I don't love it, Ace.
2 O'Learys.
2 O'Leary. I don't love it, Ace. And here's why. Because this obviously was year 2 of Rich Wallace, and there were a lot of expectations, I think, after what he did in year 1. This team was 16-4 at one point. I think it was March, if I remember correctly, the stat that I shared on Around the Kingdom. And obviously, they limped to the finish line. But again, it's only the second year of this process. I think he's trying to rebuild this team. You just said it earlier, you have to give some bit of a grace period as you kind of deal with some of these new things. I think he's trying to rebuild that culture of UCF baseball. Took a swing in the portal on some things, literally. Didn't connect, literally. And obviously didn't have the arms he needed. So it's concerning. I don't like it, Ace. 2 O'Learys for me on this one. But I think give it some time. See what happens in year 3. I don't think we need to sound the alarms just yet. So that's yours.
That really grinds my gears.
Here's what grinds my gears, Trace. This is going to be completely unreasonable, but you were out today on Wednesday at Big 12 spring meetings, and you had opportunity to speak to Johnny Dawkins. We have not heard from Johnny Dawkins since the end of the Crown tournament. So several months, and there's a lot of things that have taken place, players in, players out. But the one thing that did take place that was really interesting was the Mustafa Cham situation going to Cincinnati. You were asked, I was asked about that today, and Johnny took the high road. as Johnny is going to always do. Johnny's always going to take the high road. That's why he's a classy individual. Good for you, though, that I am not. And I'm grinded that you didn't air this thing out, Trace. Say something. Talk about what happened. Talk about stealing players. Talk about maybe things going on behind the scenes. You don't have to divulge everything. But I think taking the high road time after time after time again, at some point, you got to show your teeth. You got to show that you're angry about something, that you feel passionate about something. And I feel like Johnny took the high road again, which I expected him to do. But, man, it really grinds my gears that he didn't have any one-liners, any quips. Can you imagine George O'Leary in that setting, what he would have said, a one-liner or a quip? But I know they're two different personalities. I wanted something more to Johnny Dawkins to respond to what happened with Mustafa Chum. So that's what grinds my gears is Johnny Dawkins, too nice of a guy. Too much high road, Johnny. Take the low road.
Too nice of a guy. So this the 4 is what is most outrageous, or that I'm
that would
most
be
supportive.
The angriest about. You're angriest about this. You agree with that?
Yeah. This your take. That's what I'm grading is your take.
Tell me if I'm off base on my gears.
Yeah, you're off base. That's 3 O'Learys. This is beyond not good enough. No, he's authentic. Really, we can't have nice guys. We got to have firebrands. We got to have clickbait material from coaches. He's a nice guy. What else is he going to say? And I've a religious theme throughout with the faith. I would also say he, without sin, casts the first stone. You better have a clean house before you lob, and maybe you're taking some chances on some of your staff or players down the line, and maybe you don't live exactly in glass house, so maybe you don't say anything about what's going on there. So
you can be nice, but you can be honest. You can say, I'm disappointed that he chose to leave UCF and go to another school, go to a rival, leave under those circumstances. I want him to stay. We did everything we could to have him stay, but for whatever reason, he wanted to leave. I'm disappointed by that. I really wish he would have stayed. And it's unfortunate that he went to a rival, and there's some things that are going on there that I can't talk about. If he had said that, everybody would have loved Johnny Dawkins. Not that we don't love him now, although some people really don't. But that grinds my gears. He's just way too nice.
And you hear fans say it that during games, barking at refs. He's not a bark at the ref guy, and you usually don't see those flashes of anger even during a game situation. He might shake his head, might ask for an explanation, but doesn't really get mad. I don't know how he would be as a baseball manager, right? Sometimes the baseball manager gets in the face of the ump, gets tossed, then goes in all sorts of animation. All of the great clips there of throwing bases and kicking dirt on home plate and all of that. I can't imagine Johnny Dawkins would be a very fiery baseball manager either. I find him authentic, true to his character and himself, and I think you're off base on this one.
Just be a little bit more honest is what I would need. Trace, what has returned with us? We have our mailbag segment, but it's a little different this time around. We have our mailbag
group. We got the Sun Singers.
Our mailbag brought to you by our good friends at FloridaFootballPrep.com. If you need any gear, you want to get your footballs broken in before season, Florida Football Prep is where you go, Trace. We got a gaggle of questions this week.
Gaggle. Riley, you with all the good words.
At Riley Carey 16, does this time of year make you want to lose your patience since football is a couple of months away?
No, we go hard 24/7 between all of the content we do. It to me is a nice respite, a little slower for the summer coverage of the spring meetings of the Big 12. There's Big 12 media days coming up. There's plenty of football to talk about. And we've squeezed as much juice as you can out of spring camp with the various reports that we've done. I'm good taking a little bit of a summer break.
I'm actually okay with it too. I actually lose my patience more come like August, because then it's really close and it's the same practices every day. And it's this person on the depth chart. I just want to get to the game. So I'm okay here in May, June, July, but come August, I get impatient because we're so close and yet we're so far away. One Brian W. Peterson wants to know, Trace.
Didn't this segment used to be named?
I don't recall anything like that.
Yeah.
Best UCF football military appreciation combo. This question was inspired by the fact that Memorial Day weekend just passed. And Trace, I saw this question. You saw this question. I think we both realized we are not qualified to answer this. So phone a friend, and we found somebody who has an opinion that they can share with Brian and everybody else.
The obvious and the only top pick for the best military appreciation uniform combo that UCF has ever worn is obviously the 2017 UCF uniform that was all pewter with the red, white, and blue decals. This was an awesome look that we all love, everyone in the fan base. Too many teams fall into the trap when they make a military appreciation uniform, and UCF has fallen into this trap several times as well, as you just take a basic combo that you wear all the time and you slap some red, white, and blue decals on it and you call it a day. This look was unique. It was only the second ever time and ended up being the final time that UCF wore all pewter. The all gray just speaks military. It reminds you of Navy ships and military equipment. There was just something about it that was a little offbeat. Really worked with the red, white, and blue decals. It was a really awesome look. And to anyone who thinks that the answer is what they were in 2018 when they had that very weird helmet with the brown and gold digicamo decals, you are wrong, and that is a terrible take, and you should think about your choices. But this is the obvious number one choice.
He doesn't hold back, does he? Christian Simmons, co-host of the Pegasus
I recall
podcast,
thinking
alleged uniform expert.
I don't recall thinking about Navy ships when I saw that uniform.
I know, I didn't think anything about that either.
He's got some runner-ups though. He's got some runner-ups though. So this was the first combo. Obviously, he mentioned this one, right? He gives a runner-up to 2021, which looks to be the anthracite with the UCF stack logo with looks like the red, white, and blue. 2019. This is the typical black on black uniform, but the knight head in the American flag logo. And 2022, again,
I like that one there.
New uniform set, the black with the white pants. And again, the UCF stacked logo with the American flag through the logo. Those are, I assume, to be Christian's top 4 of his uniform shows. You mentioned he's a uniform expert. So if anybody knows anything about this stuff, it's going to have to be him, right?
Do you agree with Christian? Drop it in the comments.
Next question, Golden Knight _2. How would you grade Timo so far as AD? This is based on coaching hires, fundraising, fan engagement, and accountability. Trey Strelko, get out your red pen. What mark does Terry Mahadra get?
You know, we were grading the season for UCF athletics and around the kingdom, men's and women's sports. I'm not a really harsh grader. I probably grade on a little bit of a curve. C. And I grade down not because of the tourism tax money that he acquired, and there's some hits there with coaches, though somewhat of the lesser profile sports, rowing, you know, again, no disrespect to what they're doing, but they're not the high profile sports. I think it is something that you and I have talked about before over the course of the season, missing on the little things. And that's something I'd like to explore maybe more over the summer, things that are important to the fans. Missing on the little things, sometimes being tone deaf to the fan base. I think that drags things down. And he nears the end of his contract. We'll see what becomes, year plus or so, what becomes of an extension or other opportunities for Terry Mahadra. Scott Frost hire, going to be very pivotal there. What decisions he may make in basketball and how he navigates UCF through this revenue sharing, whatever comes of the house settlement and the construction projects as well. I'm going to say C, and I'm interested and open to the fan base that's really kind of maybe a portion of the fan base anti-Terry Mahadra right now, blaming him for anything that goes wrong. But I'd say it's a C, and I'd like to hear the argument for better than that.
Well, it's not coming from me, I can tell you that. But I looked at the way that Golden Knight _2 broke this question down. And the first part was coaching hires, right? So I'm just thinking about just coaches he's hired per se, right? You can, obviously the Gus situation did not work out. Satia Messer did not work out. Jenny Maurer did not work out. He did a home run with rowing. Seems like he's doing well at the tennis program. Rich Wallace, I think, will be okay at some point. Right? Jury's still out there. Matt Botsford in volleyball, we'll see what he ends up turning out to be, and Scott Frost, right? So I think it's kind of incomplete. So I'm with you. I think it's a C at this point just for coaching alone. Now, if you're asking about retention and getting rid of coaches, that's a different story. But just hires alone, I think we're at a C. Fan engagement, Trace, I gotta go D on this one. I think a lot of fans are frustrated with some of the things that are taking place in and around UCF and not getting involved in things being canceled. Situations at the stadium that maybe aren't worked out, ticket issues. I think a fan engagement is a D. Accountability, I think, is an interesting word because I don't know what this means per se. Like every time they screw up, does he want Terry out there saying, "Hey, we screwed up"? I think we've seen a couple of things that UCF has tried to walk back, and they don't always do it the best way. And sometimes the walk back makes it even more challenging than the actual crime they committed here. So I'm gonna give them a C for accountability. And so if I'm doing the averages, I think I'm with you on a C. But again, I think the coaching hires are really going to tip this. If Matt Botsford and Scott Frost are home run hires, I think everyone's going to love Terry Mahadra. But if those two hires don't work out for whatever reason, Satia Messer obviously isn't working out at some point, I think that's where some of this stuff can change.
You know that phrase, right? You don't want to be the guy that follows the guy. You want to be the guy that follows the guy that follows the guy, right? I think the direct comparison to Danny White continues to be a problem for Terry Mohajir, right? We talked for a long time that every Danny White hire and the coaching was a home run hire and long-standing hire, or they got plucked by a power program. So I think that dogs him a little bit. I remember something in Terry Mohajir's presser when UCF made the move to the Big 12, and he said, hey, really didn't have anything to do with me. It was already on third base. And I think about the fundraising that flows from that. I'm not taking away the fundraising and the tourist development tax, but at no point, when people say, well, nobody ever applied for it before. Yeah, Tulsa and East Carolina were coming to town. They weren't bringing any fans. It had to take a BYU, a Colorado, and Iowa State to bring in those visiting fans. So I think he's benefited from the era of being in the Big 12 in that regard. And the accountability, I think, is sometimes it's not, I don't know what, they're going to make mistakes, but I think of the situation with the resale of tickets, the walk back, it's sometimes clumsy, just the messaging, just being out there and visible with the fan base. And I know Elo would get on me on Around the Kingdom. Oh, you just want press conferences. Yeah, you know what? Press conferences are speaking directly to the fan base, maybe in a better way than an email blast to season ticket holders. So yeah, be interested to hear more from Golden Knight II on what he defines that as accountability. I'm not sure by the phrasing of his question that he's the biggest Terry Mohajir.
Bring back the fan engagement tours that traveled the state, Trace. I think that would be a nice comeback. By the way, Danny White, Athletic Director of the Year. I believe that was Sports Business Journal. At UCF_Zach, you are well aware of superstition, like a cat in a box or the Sons of the UCF, considered live and dead until observed. Scott Frost 2.0 exists in a state of infinite possibilities. Not counting the first two fake games, which game would be the game you would place the largest bet on?
Not much of a gambler. They've got a great streak on the space game. I'm going to say the space game, but boy, the law of averages, right? It's Houston in the space game. Law of averages got to kick in at some point, but you don't know what the team's going to look like. Don't know which quarterback will be on at that point, but I'm going to say space game.
That's the answer, right? I think Houston is the answer. I'll go wild card. I'll go North Carolina. It's going to be a raucous environment. Who knows what Belichick will be at that point? Obviously, that program has been all kinds of in the news. I think UCF's fired up at home going against Bill Belichick. I think they pull something out. So Houston's the answer, but just to be a little different, give me North Carolina. I believe this is a new emailer, SPR87329. With baseball selection day over, any idea how many UCF players are transferring?
Transfer portal opening. Emptiness 4, tracking it. So let's see how it develops. Too soon to say.
At Black Gold_Ed, does Texas Tech have the richest boosters in the Big 12?
Right up there with BYU, right? And in some cases, Houston and Fertitta and the basketball program in particular. You can't take anything away from that oil money, right? There are a lot of big pockets at Texas Tech. And they could be a force. They've underperformed in a lot of areas consistently in their sports history, but they're for real right now. Softball in the College World Series, they paid more than $1 million for their starting pitcher. So they're for real and seemingly not going away. And you know what those big dollar donors want? They want a return on investment. And for softball to go to the College World Series, that helps.
Yeah, look, I think the answer is Texas Tech, and my reason why is one, Cody Campbell is a well-known booster that's really supporting Texas Tech, but two, to your point, they seem to invest in every sport. BYU is making a lot of investments in basketball. I don't think you're seeing that same level of investment in football. I don't think you're seeing it in softball and baseball. Texas Tech seems like it's all in on any sport it can dominate. And it was Eric Lopez who shared with us on Around the Kingdom that with Texas and Oklahoma leaving the Big 12, I think Texas Tech sees an opportunity that says we can become the top program in this conference if we're willing to spend some money. And I think they've established they'll do that. Again, not just football. They're doing it in basketball. They're doing it in softball. I think they're going to be a force to be reckoned with if they continue to find ways to spend money. At McGuckin_M6, what sports should we cut to move funding towards football? Are we bound by any Big 12 or NCAA agreements to have a certain sport?
If I'm not mistaken, you must field 16 sports. UCF is at that minimum. So there isn't cutting anything. And as much as I think it makes sense to add something like beach volleyball, men's track, you're talking about millions of dollars of investment from an infrastructure standpoint. as well as personnel standpoint to get those programs off the ground. No, you're not cutting anything. What would you cut, though? If you could cut one? You see, I think if there was a sport, and again, you got to have 16. If there was a sport in danger, I think there's a declining interest in programs across the country having men's soccer. So, and that's a sport that's not a Big 12 sport. It's in the Sun Belt. That's a program I could see that would face some jeopardy. But then again, you have to have the 16. So if you cut it, you'd have to replace it. And soccer's been a consistent winner for a number of years now. So
this is going to sound completely backwards with where things are trending. But if I'm UCF specific and I'm being honest, I might cut women's basketball. It's going to be very tough for them to compete in the Big 12. It's going to be very tough for them to make any inroads there. Obviously, you have to spend to get to that point. It doesn't seem like UCF has the ability to do that at women's basketball. As much as it's a growing sport, and again, there's a lot of positive momentum in general. Don't know if it fits UCF and the conference we're in right now. We've never really had a history of success in women's basketball, and in the Big 12, I think it's going to be challenging.
Coach Abe had success.
A hot minute.
With it.
It was a hot minute. Then UConn came to town and usually took our doors off. But I don't know, man. Like I think we're just not because of the sport where we are positioned and the conference we're in. I just think it's going to be such a tough hill to continue to climb year after year. At Charles 407 on Blue Sky stuff that I'm not going to say, if we were forced to swap campus locations with any fellow Big 12 member, Trace, where are we going?
It does not begin and end with Lubbock. You got to go a little more west. You got to go to Tempe, Arizona. I think there's a kinship between UCF and Arizona State. UCF studied Arizona State's downtown campus in the development of UCF's downtown campus in downtown Orlando. Party City in Tempe, sunshine and warm. I think that is the natural fit for that question.
You stole my answer, Trace. My second answer.
So you're going with Lubbock?
No, I was going to go Boulder, Colorado. The beautiful mountains of Colorado, nice scenery. I actually almost thought of BYU. I mean, I think that setting is idyllic behind the baseball stadium with the mountains there, right? I think that's such a pretty environment campus. I don't know if we would fit in Utah, so I will maybe not say that. But give me Colorado. You get 4 seasons. You got mountains. You got some fun stuff there. So give me Colorado and give me more of your questions. We'll put this out every week on social media. Make sure you get your questions in here. We have a little more time in this format, maybe to answer questions. So make sure you get your questions in, and we will do that, Trace. But questions are not done because I believe you have some questions for the rest of us.
I did an art project.
Wow.
I printed out the Alumni Hall logo. I affixed it to a box.
That is beautiful. I'd love to think you did that retro, but I also think you just ran out of ink.
Yeah. No, that's just, it's pixelated. It's terrible. Okay. Don't zoom in on Alumni Hall. Yes. Great place to find all your UCF gear. Shirts, 2 for $38. You'll want to get in there now. I was over there I was at Bar Louie a couple Fridays ago, and they were closed, so I didn't get a chance to go into Alumni Hall. That right there takes money right out of your wallet, right out of your ATM card. That's what happens when you're at Alumni Hall, because you can't go in there and just look, right?
You'd be at 4100 North Alafaya Trail, by the way, or alumnihall.com/UCF.
Okay, some of these are my questions, and some of these
I'm so
are
excited about this. This is I've never had to face this. This is interesting.
Yeah, I'm not as mean-spirited as you are, though.
I mean, mean-spirited seems a little.
Well, you put me on the spot with some of these questions, so I've got a bevy of questions in here. We'll go with this one right here.
Did you brummage? Did you just you moved around there a little bit?
Yeah. Okay. So some of these are my questions. Okay, this one's really generic, but it fits the summer theme.
All right.
Beach or pool?
Beach or pool? I'm more of a pool guy.
Do you have a pool there at Eaton Manor?
No. Casa de Eaton does not have our own pool, but my community has. Let me do some quick math here. 6 to 7 different pools, depending on what.
Really? I'm looking forward to when I come visit you in June.
Yeah. Bring your arm floaties. 2 water parks as well.
Water parks? What do you mean water parks? Slides?
Slides and everything. Yeah, the whole 9 yards.
Whoa.
And they got bars, by the way. But there's too much that goes into going to the beach. You have to get all the stuff from the car to the sand. It's not right next to each other, by the way, right? So you're lugging all this crap. The sand's always hot. Sandals on, sandals off. What are you going to do, right? Then you get out there. You're in the water. Not the sand sticks to you. You try to take that shower at the end. That shower has never worked. In the history of society, the shower at the beach has just never worked properly. I don't care what you say. So now you get sand in your car. You got sand everywhere. You get back home and sand in the shower. And it's not really all that enjoyable. by the way, you got to go to the bathroom. Where's the bathroom at the beach? It's in the ocean. I'm not going in there with everybody else, right? So I am not a beach guy.
However, what are you saying there about the bathroom at the pool?
I think a lot of pools typically have their bathrooms there.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. I mean, although I'm willing to understand that there's also some individuals who may have a relief valve in other areas. The beach is just such a fiasco to get to. If you could, if I had my own private beach in my own backyard, I'd be set. But the fact that I have to mingle amongst the commoners and walk 75 miles and put 32 coins in the little machine because God forbid there's parking by the beach, it's just an undeal. Now, by the way, I also don't like chlorine. So that's the other problem with the pool. Chlorine in the hair and the eyes really annoys me and whatnot. But if I had to pick out of those two, give me the pool.
After I tore my ACL playing ultimate frisbee a decade plus ago, I was looking for something that would be athletic, but less taxing. ACL surgery, kind of a big deal. So I took up swimming. So I know you think this tan's just all natural, but it's from being out in the sun a couple of times a week. So I swim a couple of times a week. So pool for me.
I have followed.
Are you since we've switched roles in this Suns Today show, are you allowed follow-up questions? You really put me on the spot.
Which roles from what? I don't know what you're referring to. Ultimate frisbee ACL tear? How did that happen? That seems like a non-contact sport.
Yeah. No. So, you ever played ultimate frisbee?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, right. Kind of like football, right? So, I was downtown Orlando, was on a team, and I jumped up, caught the frisbee in the end zone. I landed in soft sand, and my knee went one way. I went the other. I caught the frisbee. I knew I was in pain, but I didn't have time to process the pain that I was in because I landed in a fire ant pile. So I was immediately chewed on. So guys came over to, hey, good job on catching that. I know my knees whack and I'm getting chewed on. So the whole thing was bad. And then you got to go through the surgery and the rehab. And I didn't love ultimate frisbee enough to continue to do it. And I figured the likelihood of an ACL tear swimming would be less. So that's why I started doing that.
Another follow-up. Cap? Do we wear one of those caps over our heads?
So that depends on when I swim. If I swim in the heat of the day, midday, I put it on mainly from a sun protection standpoint. I keep the hair short from an aerodynamic standpoint. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but mainly from a sun because I don't really, with the hair short for swimming, I don't need it from a swimming perspective. You got another follow-up.
And last one.
Somewhere this is going to Speedo, isn't it?
No, it's not.
That's where this is going, isn't it?
I don't want that visual, so I'm not doing that. What is your best stroke?
Just freestyle. I mean, I'm not doing it so much for, I did master swimming for a while, so I got really good at the various. Not the backstroke. I've never really been good at that. Yeah. No, not the back. What's the other one? The butterfly. That one. That's a big mess for me. But I mainly do it for exercise. Try and do. I swim in a 25-yard pool, so I try and do 80 laps. Try and do about 2,000 yards each time I swim. I haven't done this in a while. I used to swim. The pool's open 2 hours for lap swimming. There are times where I did the full 2 hours without stopping.
Wow.
Which psychologically, when I started swimming, would be like, what? But once you hit a fatigue point, you don't get more tired. You're tired, but you can keep going. But it's sort of a strange phenomenon to have your head in the water for that long. So a whole waterboarding kind of feel. I haven't done that in a while.
Waterboarding. Okay. Well, that wraps up this edition of Suns Today. Again, if you want to find us during the summertime, this is the best avenue to do that. Suns Today. Find us on YouTube. You can find us on the audio feed as well, wherever you get your downloadable content. Make sure you subscribe, by the way. A nice little review never hurt anybody. If you think we've earned 5 stars, we love 5 stars. If you want to give a comment, we'd love a comment there.
We love comments.
Again, make sure you stay locked here. This is where you find your Summer Suns content while Trace puts away the Alumni Hall box, which reminds me to thank all of our sponsors who help make all this possible. Alumni Hall, Florida Football Prep, and our good friends at Warner, Hoffman, Greg, and Garcia. For Trace Trucco, my name is Adam Eaton. We will see you next time on Suns Today.